Hey there, fellow fans. I come to you today with an extremely serious video. A video that I, again, did not want to make, but that is called for, I believe, now more than ever. However, before I get into that, just a quick health update. I am back to normal. The writing has officially resumed. Next week or the week after shall be the debut of the next video. And with that update out of the way, let me get into the true reason I'm making this video. The reason I'm freestyling this right now, the reason I'm sitting here just speaking to you candidly from the heart is because recently Luton has released a video where he raised concerns about GW's well-known and questionable practices. In this video, one of the very first and most memorable things he mentions is the idea that voting with your wallet is largely pointless, to the point that it would be disingenuous for him to suggest it as a viable strategy.
I also want to address one thing because I always find it kind of funny. There's always the people who are like, vote with your wallet, you know, don't give them the money for pre-orders, don't give them the money for the limited, and they'll learn their lesson. It's like, yeah, okay, in theory, yes, possibly that could work. However, and I wanted to get this thought in very early in the video so people didn't miss it and not later on. Whenever people say stuff like that, there are times, yes, where if a company outrages enough people, then en masse they take some action, you know, voting with their wallets as it were. Yes, it can have an effect. But when it comes to Games Workshop,
business, eh? Well, let me tell you something. You just lost yourself a customer.
What? I'm sorry, Homer, I couldn't hear you.
I said you just lost yourself a customer.
What?
You just lost yourself a customer.
Homer, you're gonna have to speak up.
Just lost yourself a customer.
so with that in mind, Games Workshop are not particularly concerned about people leaving the hobby. Although saying that, obviously 10th edition has changed around a lot, and a lot of that is due to feedback they received from people who were not so interested in 9th or had stopped playing. So in actuality, maybe there is something a little to them obviously being concerned. You know, they don't want to be completely belligerent and ignore their customer base.
Luton is an incredible creator. Perhaps the best possible lore channel that exists for 40k content and lore deep dives. I admire his tenacity. I aspire to be as well read, and I salute the quality and effort that goes into his incredible content. Never doubt that. Never mistake my position on that. All of that said, Luton is completely wrong about this, and furthermore, his dissenting opinion on the power of the voting with your wallet philosophy and the production value he puts into making that point are a terrible mistake on his part, and one that may well set back the power of the Warhammer community by years or worse. I'm barely a speck in the breeze compared to the power of voice that Luton wields, but there is a moral imperative as a capitalist for me to stand against that kind of rhetoric and to spark at least some resistance with what little voice I have. Voting with your wallet is not only one of the only things you can do, but one of the most impactful things that can be done at all. And I plan to illustrate this. I plan to remind people of what has apparently been forgotten. It hasn't been years and years since our last victory with voting with our wallet. And I'll make points, I will make examples. I plan to restore and rekindle that faith that has apparently been lost. Because if a voice like Luton can fall to this kind of dissent, if he can lose hope, if his knee can touch the ground in this respect, then I have no idea how many others have touched it, and no idea how many more will now that they've seen publicly what he has said. I plan to remind you all of what has already been accomplished by this philosophy and why it is so desperately important that we never forget or give up its power and never downplay it. We all remember the backlash towards EA when they tried to instill loot boxes into Battlefront. But what few of us quite understand is how impactful the fall of EA Star Wars really was. With it came the silent fall of loot boxes all over the industry. We were on the cusp of finding loot boxes everywhere, in single-player games, in every MMO, in every possible mobile spot. But that came crashing down because people voted with their wallets. They raised hell and a half. And because of that, politicians got drawn into it as an aspect of some new cultural war that could garner favor with the public over. Legislation in multiple countries was raised, and the entire, not just EA, the entire gaming industry was forced to take a hard step back and self-regulate before they were speared like a whale out of Japanese waters and hauled moaning and screaming onto the legal deck of consumer law. That was a victory. That was a huge victory, and it wouldn't have existed without us, the consumers. It was us alone. No one else was on our side. Everyone else was willing to watch us drown in these disgusting mechanics that would drain us of more and more of our money just to have a standard gameplay experience. This was a bigger victory than getting EA to step down. It won 1,000 silent victories in the aftermath. 1,000! And it continues to, each and every day. Voting with your wallet wins wars you hear about and wars you do not. Entire toxic concepts are completely scrapped before they ever even become controversial on the power of this capitalistic public principle alone. Our decisions matter. Voting with your money matters. It often matters more than voting with your actual legal vote. Never doubt that. Never question the amount of power you have as a consumer. And these victories continue on. The loudest, most recent one that comes to my mind, most absolute victory we've had in a long time, and it wasn't even in a long time, just the closest one to us here in the modern day that I can really recall off the top of my head, is the victory we had within the Dungeons & Dragons community when it came to the new OGL that was nearly forced onto us. Allow me to elaborate on this. For a long time, D&D has been one of the top tabletop role-playing games within the span of the entire human world. It is not only because they were among the first at the table, however. Dungeons & Dragons had been dying out and bleeding money until they came to us with a gift. The OGL version 1. This policy stipulation allowed others to create their own content for Dungeons & Dragons, their own races, their own editions, and thus add the power of countless creative and motivated minds to the creation of modules and systems all within the D&D brand, all within the D&D system itself. It was like an infusion of fresh blood into a dying elder vampire, and D&D rose from it anew, a juggernaut. And that power, the power of the OGL, has carried them into glorious notoriety as the king of their industry for years. From sci-fi amendments, to incredible original stories to play with friends, to endless incredible additions in the forms of races, items, mechanics, and new places and locations, D&D grew fat on its new power. And eventually, they grew greedy. Thus came the darkness of the new OGL, where the greedy shareholders and corporatists who linger within Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro decided now was the time to end their golden age and shackle all under their power in the name of short-sighted profitability and vain pride. They sought to legally bind all who had used the OGL in a way that had never been intended, to market and steal material not made by them but by others, to take the profit earned by these good faith creators, to steal their ideas and incorporate them into their own IP without the consent of those who had written them, entrapping hundreds of hard-working independent people who had been honey-trapped by the promises of the first OGL, only to be hoodwinked by the sudden implementation of the OGL version 2. Like Sauron in The Lord of the Rings, the Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro corporations had come years before as givers of gifts and power, only to in secret forge the final version of the OGL, their intent to take back all they had given and much, much more besides. To turn those they never hired into effective slaves of their greedy desires. But it was not to be. A sort of brotherhood, silent, unspoken, was formed between the disaffected internal workers and creators within Wizards of the Coast and the legions of players and game masters who facilitated the hobby. And the OGL 2 was leaked before it could be completed. And en masse, readers, players, game masters, and creators united. And do you know what they did? Do you know how they fought? They voted with their wallets. They ceased to purchase the new sourcebooks. They canceled their subscriptions to D&D Beyond. They began to invest in Pathfinder and a myriad of other worthy tabletop RPG competitors. The war for the soul of Dungeons & Dragons was thusly fought. And while intense, it was a short conflict, for soon the gilded castles buckled, the dark forces within them bled in the only way they have ever cared about. And as they watched their revenues drop, and their rivals rising on all sides, they tossed down their weapons, they broke their own prides, and the OGL version 2 was cast back into the pit from whence it came, and something new took its place. Assurances, amendments to the OGL version 1 that would not only promise that the OGL version 2 would never return, but that the OGL version 1 would become in itself eternal. Many bear the metaphorical scars of that war, and will not come back to D&D, will never come back. But many of us who remain now lift our dice with pride because we won the war for our hobby, and as a result, we own our hobby. The Wizards of the Coast continue now, in good faith, chastened by the knowledge their community is not composed of a pack of sopping, kneeling pussies. We know where our power is. It is in our wallets, in our choices to support them. We showed them we were unafraid to wield it, and we won. And that did not happen so long ago. That was extremely recent. I want that for this community. I want that for Warhammer 40k. I want us, the people who play it and pay into it, to be the ones who own the hobby, because it is only right that if it thrives on us, it should belong in part to us as well. And we are so close. So very close. Though GW bears its wounds with a stubborn pride, it is still wounded, and it still kneels, if silently, in the end. We in the Warhammer community have our own silent wars with the overlords of GW and their constant greed and bullying, and we have made them suffer for it. When GW announced their ban on fan animations, it was us, we, not them, but we, who ended the golden age of Warhammer. It was we who struck at them and removed 25% of their market value. It was we who made them silently capitulate, and now, though the policy still stands visibly, it is rarely, if ever, enforced. Creators like Major Kill confirm to us that they have suffered and backed off, that while too proud to recant, Games Workshop dare not continue on the path they were on before. We are so close, so very close to a pure victory over them, over their unfairness and their brutal tactics and policies. But by having a voice like Luton dissent against the power of voting with your wallet, we have just suffered a fatal defeat on a battlefield we never thought contended. To think that Luton would lose hope and yield in such a way to embrace that pessimism when our power has been proven so many times in the past. Do you need more evidence? Take a look towards Marvel and DC. The newest Captain Marvel comics canceled. Feminized Tim Drake canceled. Starfire's obese, non-canonical daughter will never see the light of day again. Slowly we claw back what was taken into the depths of dingy quality and culture war. Why? Because we will not purchase them. Even Star Wars comes back day by day, closer to what it once was and farther from the sequel trilogy that it descended into. Look at the kings of comics in the current comic book industry. How can anyone look at DC and Marvel and seriously call them the big two, now that they've fallen so far behind? The knowledge is public, the information is there, you merely need to look at it. We have power. In the end, we are the deciders. We determine what lives and what dies within a capitalistic society, and by that, we determine the quality of our care. We get what we deserve. If we come groveling and crawling over each other for the scraps GW will toss us like the water-starved peasants of Immortal Joe's post-apocalyptic empire, then we deserve to be pissed on and to drink it up gratefully. But it does not have to be that way. Let the scalpers go broke purchasing their stock until they have nothing left. Let GW watch as their competitors rise. Let them wallow in sand and dust when they should be striding forward all the faster. Let their new celebrity endorsements be forced to pick sides publicly and to stand against them. Let their investors watch their profits stall, watch their growth curtail. Do not give in to apathy, because apathy is death. Do you know what the greed-addled corporatists in GW felt and saw when they beheld Luton's despair? They wrung their hands and sounded the calls of victory, because it does not matter if you bitch and moan about what they do, if you will not do anything about it. What they saw was the best case scenario, recognition in the public of what they did wrong and continue to do wrong, and an absolute apathy towards resisting it in any meaningful way. To you I say this: do not follow suit. Do not let this victory stand. Do not spite Luton for his defeat, but do not allow GW to feel it has won. Let us turn this loss into a victory. Let us see that knee striking the sand and take it as a sign. A sign not to surrender, but to renew our resolve. Resist the hype. Spite the new edition. March towards the advent of 3D printing. Purchase a 3D printer for yourself or seek out those who have them. Purchase your future needs from them. Burn out the weakness in this community that enables our abuse. Draw strength from your hate of that abuse. Whether by boycott or silent decision, we are the arbitrators of our own treatment. Do not dare complain about it if you're not willing and ready to do something about it. Accept what you choose to accept. The right to whinge comes only to those who will do more than whine about it. I've said the same about Disney, and I will say the same twice as loudly for Games Workshop. Do not accept bad treatment if that is indeed what you are receiving. Do not capitulate to abuse if indeed you are being abused. Do not accept your own suppression if people seek to suppress you. Even if you stand alone, resist because it is the right thing to do. Have faith that others will do so as well. History is clear. Our power is real, but it is not an effortless thing to wield. So stand up, fans of Warhammer 40k. Stand up and wield your power. A great voice has fallen, but not so great as all of our own. Do not lose hope. Do not surrender your strength if you wish to use it. And do not tolerate what is unfair or unjust, especially if it is being inflicted upon you. The responsibility to defend yourself falls on you first. If this is really something bad, if these prices are unfair, if their stock is being manipulated to abuse you, if pre-orders aren't pre-orders, you are the one in charge of whether that is acceptable or not. You must be the hand that lifts. You must be the one to start saving yourself from what this hobby might turn into if we accept apathy and simply allow it to keep degrading worse and worse and worse. There is no excuse. There is only the choice. History has proven our power is real. That is not in question. The facts are not in question. The only thing that is in question is this. Is this a real issue? Is it a real problem? And if so, are you willing to do anything about it? So say I, a small fan, but a fan with too much time.